And we're back with the panel. Tomi Lahren, was it a mistake for Tim Walz to say IVF and then get called out by the press because he used an entirely different technique called intrauterine insemination?
I'm going to be honest with you, Howie. I don't think most Americans care which method of fertility treatment that he and his wife used to have their children. I think it's nonsensical to talk about it because it doesn't impact the everyday voter or the everyday American. So I'm not going to pile on that. I do think, though, that his pattern of telling little white lies or little fibs, it does reveal that maybe he does have an issue with being fully transparent, or maybe his truth is different than the actual truth. But I think that we should be talking about how he handled COVID protocols. I think we should be talking about how he handled the Summer of Love 2020. I think we should be talking about Minnesota being a trans refuge state. I think those things are much more important to talk about. I don't care which way he conceived his family. That's his business, not mine.
Right, but it is important to some people because this alternative method doesn't use discarded embryos, which is part of what makes IVF controversial. Leslie Marshall, I don't know what kind of vetting the campaign did, but whether you like Tim Walz, don't like Tim Walz, I mean, look, he's a hunter, he's a fisher, he was a teacher. He has a pretty liberal record in Minnesota that undercuts any move by Kamala Harris to appear more moderate.
Well, actually, most presidential candidates on the left come to the center, and we saw that with the vice president as well. And you're supposed to pick a running mate that complements you, doesn't mimic you, right? You know, kind of opposites attract. I just want to say, Tomi, we agreed on almost everything there. As somebody who's had both IUI and IVF, Howie, there is no IUI system. It's all an IVF system. They usually for people out there that will go, I just went right to IVF. I've had 13 IVF cycles to have my daughter. I started with IUI. I had 2 or 3 failed IUIs and then went to IVF. And I understand your point about, you know, what embryo is, you know, more critical with the embryo, you know, in IVF. But I don't think he's wrong in saying, I don't want the government to try to prevent me from being a parent when there are so many ways out there. And I would agree with Tomi that the voters don't care if it's IUI, IVF. And then lastly,
well, don't just jump in and say, I didn't know that about you,
sorry.
And I'm glad to have you share that.
Oh, thank you. So I have to say, though, I try not to laugh out loud, and no offense because I love Tomi, when anybody on the right with Donald Trump as their candidate has any say about anybody else telling a white lie, a big lie, a little lie, a purple lie, whatever lie. Donald Trump tells a lot of lies. So if you're gonna do that, you know, on one side of the aisle, please turn inward and look at your own candidate.
All right, let me play a soundbite from